Clashes broke out at an EU border checkpoint on Tuesday when Polish security forces used water cannon and tear gas to push back migrants trying to cross from Belarus. The European Union has approved more sanctions against the Belarusian government. The EU accuses Belarus of escorting potential asylum seekers from the Middle East to the Polish border.
Violence breaking out on the Belarus-Poland border. Stones fly one way and water cannon blast back. 7 Polish border guards were injured, one of them seriously. Migrants trying to break through the border barricade were pushed back into Belarus. Water from the cannon was allegedly laced with tear gas. In Poland, border guards and soldiers are on constant watch. The operation was carried out in several stages, and the migrants had different tasks. There were people behind the front line throwing stones and other dangerous objects. That gave the front line cover to attempt to destroy the Polish border checkpoint. Polish authorities claim the clash was controlled and supervised by Belarusian forces. There were many people in the crowd with face coverings. That indicates that they were Belarusian security forces. In the video footage we have, they appear to be people with European facial features and not migrants. By the evening, the situation at the border crossing had eased. According to Belarus state-owned media, leader Alexander Lukashenko has authorized a shelter for migrants close to the border.
DW's Barbara Wesel is at the Poland-Belarus border, and she has more on the conditions many migrants there are facing.
So they are like punching balls in this geostrategic game between the European Union, Poland, Belarus and Russia, and they simply can't help themselves. There's just a handful of local helpers operating in this area here. They're finding people in the forest from time to time who are totally exhausted. Some have to be taken to hospitals because of hypothermia. So their situation is really dire. And there is no solution, no political solution in sight anywhere. Warsaw isn't budging. The government is sticking to its hard line. Nor so far do we see any great movement on the side of Minsk and Alexander Lukashenko. So nobody here has really any idea. And people say once it gets really cold out here in these forests, a real human catastrophe might happen.
For more on this story, we can speak to our Brussels bureau chief, Alexandra von Namen. Good morning to you, Alexandra. I want to ask you about pushbacks. That is the process of taking people who have reached EU territory back onto non-EU territory. That is supposed to be illegal in the EU. So what does Brussels have to say about Poland's actions on the border?
It is illegal because every member state is obliged to provide admission in order to assess individual claims for asylum. However, we have to say that Poland has amended its law, effectively legalizing pushbacks, and that's what also happened to some extent in Latvia and Lithuania, in those countries who are affected by the border crisis. There has been some criticism from the European Commission. The commissioner in charge said that they have question marks, that pushbacks can never be normalized. However, we have to say that this issue doesn't seem to be a priority for the European Union, for the European Commission, that it seems it's more important to sort of present a united front against Belarus, because it is seen also as a geopolitical problem here. So the European Union wants to show that they are not going to give in to Lukashenko and his attempts to blackmail the European Union.
A geopolitical problem, but are there any signs that there's progress on diffusing the situation on the diplomatic level?
Well, I think that there is some movement there. We know that Lukashenko was now ready to speak with European leaders, with the German Chancellor in particular. And we also know that the Iraqi government, for example, they have announced a first repatriation flight that is due to take place on Thursday. So people who are willing to leave might be able to do so. And the majority of the people trapped there are from Iraq. However, we also have to say that when we look at the scenes we just saw in the package, the standoff between the Belarusian and Polish border guards at the border, then, security forces using tear gas and water cannon against migrants, this situation could easily escalate.
At the same time, people are dying at the border. Temperatures continue to drop. I mean, does the EU, in the meantime, have a plan on how to bring migrants to safety while this political crisis continues?
No, I don't think so. I don't see anything that would amount to a plan here. Although we have to say that there are politicians from the German Green Party, for example, who are saying we now need to get those people out. We need to bring them to safety and to assess their asylum claims. However, the majority don't seem to be willing to do so because, as I said, they think it's important to send a strong signal that no one will believe that if they get to Belarus, they will be able to get into the European Union. And that's, of course, a huge problem. And this is just like a very bad situation for all those who are now trapped between soldiers and razor wire.
Our Brussels Bureau Chief, Alexandra von Namen, reporting for us. Thank you very much. Let's get some more perspective on this story. Now we can speak to Lotte Leicht. She's the EU Director of Human Rights Watch, and she's joining us from Brussels. Thank you for joining us here on DW. We have heard proposals within the European Union, for example, from Lithuania, to create a humanitarian corridor for trapped migrants, to assist them to return to their home countries. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it is important to assist those who wish to return to their home countries and can do so safely. At the same time, there is a responsibility on the part of EU countries to hear asylum claims for those who wish to apply for asylum, and to do that in an orderly fashion rather than meeting people with tear gas, water cannons, and violence. So both would make sense and are urgently needed. Apart from that, what is really urgent right now is for Poland, that has erected sort of a state of emergency and a restricted zone, to allow immediate access to that zone on its part of the border to humanitarian organizations, journalists, human rights workers, and others, lawyers who can help people with their claims and so on. This is urgent. This is now literally about saving lives.
Well, I want to ask you about Poland's perspective here, because Poland says it is protecting its borders. What do you make of that?
Well, Poland certainly has a right to protect its borders, but it also has obligations towards those who are trying to enter Poland and apply for asylum. And it is clear that what we are seeing now is a very vicious and cynical game of illegal and brutal pushes on the part of the Belarus authorities and security forces, and pushbacks that are also illegal and brutal on the part of Poland. Two wrongs don't make a right, and an EU country should apply its international obligations, and to treat people with dignity and humanity is absolutely urgent now.
I want to double down on that, because you have written that Belarus is indeed brutally abusing migrants and asylum seekers in the situation. So what is the right way for the European Union to take a stand against President Lukashenko, but also seek a humane solution?
Well, the EU is taking a stand on Lukashenko's ruthless manipulation of migrants. It is introducing additional targeted sanctions, and it is widening the prospect of such sanctions to also target those who buy into Lukashenko's very cynical game of using migrants, transporting them, effectively trafficking them to Belarus, and using them as human hostages at the border to put pressure on the EU. So that's one part of the coin, and that pressure seems to be working now, at least better than words and threats were doing just a few days ago, because there are some changes, and your correspondent mentioned that before. But at the same time, there is a human crisis at the border that the EU and its member states are exacerbating by not treating migrants and asylum seekers who are being abused in this game with the dignity and the rights that they deserve.
We'll have to leave it there. Lotte Leicht, the EU Director of Human Rights Watch, thank you very much for joining us here on DW.
Thank you.